Okay, folks, now we're getting to the really fun part of biology, and so I will pick my pointer up here. Basically, we're looking at cellular reproduction. How do cells get from more cells? Again, this thing that we call reproduction is what's really critical in life, in that life is able to make more of itself. And basically, this reproduction on the cellular level can result in the birth of a new organism, or it can be basically some replacement. So basically what I want to get into is what's the purpose of cell division. First off, in the very beginning, when a cell divides, you replace itself. A cell can divide a number of times in order to produce growth. So if you want to have a multicellular organism, you have to have many cell divisions, and these cells will eventually become a little bit different. The cell's division can also be basically cell reproduction. So when an amoeba divides, it's reproducing. So even though just the cell is making a copy of itself, this is cell reproduction. Asexual reproduction can occur in things like sea stars and the African violet, where basically when you have parts of a multicellular organism just basically do the process of growth to make another individuals. And so you don't need to have sexual reproduction on there. And so that's what we call asexual reproduction. Okay, sexual reproduction requires fertilized egg and sperm and a type of reductive cell division called meiosis, which is very important, and we'll talk about that as well today. In the eukaryotes, we have very long pieces of DNA that typically contain possibly thousands of genes on them, and these are called your chromosomes. You may have all seen pictures of chromosomes. We human beings have 46 chromosomes. Chimpanzees have 48. The mouse has 40, but giraffe, which is much larger, has only 30. And so, again, your chromosomes it's like dividing things up in books and stuff like that. It doesn't really matter. Again, like I said before, chimpanzees and gorillas both have 48 chromosomes, so you can have different species have the same number of chromosomes. The chromosome number doesn't make you unique. However, you do need at least an even set of chromosomes, okay? And so what's going on in chromosomes, and so here is the chromosomes in the cell. These chromosomes have to line up and get divided. And so the purpose of the chromosomes is basically to make sure that each gene is incorporated into the offspring. Now, normally DNA, when it's being used during interphase, is very kind of long and drawn out. This is a very long molecule, and it's very susceptible to breakage. And so what you do during cell division is you wind up these chromosomes, like winding up rope and folding it up, in order to make something that we call a centromere. Now, the centromeres can be moved relatively easy, and they won't damage easy. Okay, look at that structure. And so here we have a single copy of the chromosome, and what happens is that copy is duplicated. These copies are held together at the centromere, and what happens is that we can pull a centromere apart. When we pull a centromere apart, we pull out the chromosomes. So in this way, a cell can very easily divide the chromosomes. And in human beings, we have 46 of them that we need to divide, and it's very critical that we get them separated. And so what we're looking at is what we call a cell cycle. In the cell cycle, we have this thing that we call interphase, which is basically what the cell is doing when it's not dividing. And then during its division phase, of which the typical cell division that we have is what we call mitosis, we have prophase, where the chromosomes start to condense. We have metaphase, where they line up, and then telophase, etc. And so this is an example of showing you a graph of what we call the cell cycle. And what's happening is when a cell is created, it goes through G1, which is growth 1, which is producing all the stuff that it needs. During S phase, it's producing synthesis of DNA. And during G2, it's making all the things it needs to divide. And then this meiosis, mitosis or meiosis, is the cell division time. And that's usually a relatively short period of time in the overall life of a cell. So again, you do need to know the parts of this. Animals are a little bit different than plants, and they have what's called a cleavage furrow. And so once the nucleus divides, you'll actually kind of pinch out the middle of the cell, and you'll end up with those two individual cells. Plants do it a little bit differently in that they produce a cell plate in between the cells, and then they grow after those. Now, this thing that we call cancer is kind of out of control growth, but not really. It's controlled, but it's not controlled in a normal way. And so cancer is a disease of the cell cycle, right? It's not a disease where bacteria or anything that comes in. It's where a cell that is normally controlled will grow out of control. So it grows in places it shouldn't grow. It grows at times it shouldn't grow. And these things that we call tumors are abnormal growing masses of body cells. Metastasis is when those cells can divide to other parts of the tumor. A malignant tumor can spread to other body parts, and it interrupts body's normal body functions. Sometimes tumors can occur that really won't affect you at all, but sometimes they do. This is an example of a tumor that grows and metastasizes in a breast cancer. Treatments that we have include radiation therapy or chemotherapy, which basically kill your rapidly dividing cells. So it's one of the reasons why people who are on radiation therapy or chemotherapy will lose their hair, rapidly dividing cells, and become nauseous. The best way to kind of cure cancer is to not get it in the first place. And so we have a number of behaviors that can reduce your risk of cancer. Basically, being exposed to anything that will increase cell division can probably cause cancer. Now, the next thing that we want to talk about is this process that we call meiosis, which is sexual reproduction. In sexual reproduction, we have to use meiosis, we have to use fertilization, because what we're doing is a reductive cell division. And so here's an example of this individual, and I believe this individual producing these two individuals. And these are the grandparents of these individuals, and I believe her parents, most not likely his parents, okay? You guys have all seen this before. And so what we see is chromosomes in the somatic cell, our normal non-sexual cell. We typically have 46 chromosomes. A karyotype is an arrangement that reveals the organism's chromosomes. Homologous chromosomes are chromosomes that code for the same thing. And so here's a karyotype of a human being, and what we see is two sets of chromosomes for each of the types of chromosomes that we have. So you are what we call diploid. Again, in human beings, we have sex chromosomes, X and Y. Insects are different, X and 0 and stuff like that. And so during our life cycle, what we will do is in our gonads, we will have a process of meiosis occur in which the egg and the sperm will be made that are haploid. Those come together during a fertilization event, and that will divide into, by meiosis, into us as an adult individual. So we spend a little bit of time, but parts of our life being haploid. Okay. Most organisms do, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. But what happens is you get one set of chromosomes from your mother, here in red, one set of chromosomes from your father, and what happens is that during meiosis, these two separate randomly, either from your mother or your father. And again, with 23 chromosomes, you have these 23 random events, and ideally that makes a unique individual. But that is not unique enough. To not only make it more unique, what we do is we do a process that's called crossing over. And so during prophase 1, what can happen is the chromosomes will actually kind of mix and match, and they'll recombine with one another. That's a real world, to produce new and unique chromosomes. So that each sperm and each egg is really a unique sperm or egg. And I'll go over this in class, what the numbers are for them. So again, when we review mitosis, meiosis, this is something that we need to know, that the number of cell divisions vary. Mitosis uses one cell division. Meiosis uses two cell divisions. All events are unique to meiosis, occur during meiosis 1. Here's a really good graph kind of showing what's happening is during mitosis, the chromosomes line up. The chromosomes line up. They all separate. During meiosis 1, the homologous chromosomes separate. Okay, and that's important to know. Again, the random fertilization of the egg, and so if each gametes one, where it represents one of 8,300,000 different chromosome combinations at fertilization, humans would have 8 times 8 million, or 70 trillion different possible chromosome combinations. And again, it's with crossing over that greatly increases that possibility. And so again, is sex important? And there's not. We can have a number of things called non-disjunction, which is like trisomy 21 or Down syndrome, where you will have an individual. Well, that will happen. It's not necessarily a good thing. Again, these are still human beings. They tend to be infertile. They tend to have other problems associated with them. Again, as you get older and this process gets a little bit weaker, we tend to see it a little bit more. So abnormal number of chromosomes. Again, I will kind of skip over this, and we